Today we're going to take a look at some of the blood feuds from the early 1980s to the mid 1980s. And we're going to be looking at them as they were featured on the cover of the magazines, and not so much like the feud that's going on inside the magazine, but the one that dominates the cover and that's given it all the publicity. Now, there's a million feuds in every territory. We all know that. But like I said, we're just going to focus on a couple that were popular, a couple that you may not have heard of or were smaller. And like I said, they're all going to feature on the cover of the magazine. Starting at the gate, we got Bruno Sammartino now, who lost the world title and took a little trip to Puerto Rico shortly after losing the title and capturing the WWC championship down in Puerto Rico. And he would float around to a few other independent smaller places, do a run in Japan. And then basically you could say he was semi-retired and on the announce booth. So it's kind of funny to see Bruno here on the magazine cover posing, looking really good. And he has what could be the secret to help Bob Backlund's reign as world champion. Kind of a different cover for him. Usually it's about a feud, it's about him being champion, and now he's in his twilight years and, like I said, semi-retired and giving his advice to the younger generations. But there's always something behind that. The magazines, they know. They know when someone's coming to a certain territory and who to give the heat to, even though it was like kind of not really said. There was like underlining. They knew. So they knew something was about to happen with Bruno, and that's why they put him, I believe, back on the front cover again. And they were certainly right. Bruno Sammartino's protege, Larry Zbyszko, getting fed up, disenfranchised on how he was being treated as being Bruno's puppet and claiming to be a much better wrestler. Bruno's past his prime, blah, blah, blah. And they decide to have an exhibition bout on Championship Wrestling TV on TV. So, you seen how it was going. Larry was getting frustrated. Bruno was whipping him around the ring until Larry decides to pull out a wooden chair and crack it over the head. Bruno's drowning in his own pool of blood. This is May of 1980 Inside Wrestling. And Larry really set himself away from the living legend here and created, extreme hatred by the fans from that incident. That would lead on to a pretty big war that would take place for the next 6 to 8 and 9 months or so. Them two battling up and down the East Coast. Bruno back on the cover of Pro Wrestling Illustrated. I'm tired of being everyone's target. And the match was set for Madison Square Garden, April 21st, 1980. And this has got Zabisco and Bruno as the main event. World champion, undercard. He's taking on the Samoan in the main event for the title. Pretty shitty world championship bout there. And Ken Patera takes on Pat Patterson, and he wins the Intercontinental title on this very night. So there's a program for one of their kickoffs to their main feuds that will go on, like I said, up and down the East Coast for a good while. Bruno goes berserk. He finally got his hands on Zabisco in the Garden. I believe he was disqualified for this one. There wasn't too many clean finishes. There was a lot of disqualifications and whatnot. I can't remember them all, but there were more brawls, of course, than anything else. It was about Larry getting his ass beat to the upcoming big event that none of us knew about yet that was going to be happening real shortly during that summer. Larry Zabisco's foolproof plot to drive Bruno out of wrestling, and all he did was awaken the giant within. August of 1980, Bruno and Zabisco continuing to battle on the cover Inside Wrestling. And like I said, that feud was set up for the Shea Stadium Spectacular, and here's the program to that event. We can go to the front again, and if you look, here's the whole card. I'm not sure if you guys can see all that. I think you can. The main event, inside of a steel cage, Bruno takes on Larry for the final countdown here. Also, battle of the super heavyweights. Hogan takes on Andre the Giant. Bob Backlund down to the fourth match before the final, and him and Pedro Morales are taking on both the Samoans, and they would win the World Tag Team Championship. Pedro and Backlund would. They would have to hand the tag team titles back in because there's a stipulation in the WWF that if you can only hold one belt at a time, and you can't hold two titles. So he had to forfeit the tag titles. Same thing happened with Pedro Morales when he beat Ivan Koloff for the world title in 70 whatever one. He was the WWF United States Heavyweight Champion, and that was a merger. That belt went into the Heavyweight Championship. So it was a rule that's been in effect for a long time, and they were following up on it, so it was legit. And we'll take one more last look at Bruno. After stopping Zabisco's monster, what's next for Bruno? Is he going to take on Backlund for the title? No, he's not going to take him on, but still, here he is, winter of 1980. You got a full year of coverage for Bruno here, and just showing how much the fans really still loved him, and how he could still draw as a main eventer, even though he didn't have the belt. Didn't matter. The feud would kick over a few years later on with Zabisco taking on Bruno Sammartino Jr., or we know on the East Coast as David Sammartino, and they would have this not really a continuing feud, but they had a few matches down in Georgia, and secretly, not really secretly, but in the magazines, no one really knew about it. These two would go on to have matches for the next 20-some years, and you'd never know. I think the last one was in 2000. Oh man, what was it? 4. I mean, he was long retired, like Larry was long retired. It was after WCW closed. And I have the magazine somewhere. I can't find it, though. And I did ask a few people around, and they couldn't remember what date it was either. But, yeah, they had, like I said, they wrestled a lot together, him and Larry. Moving on to the next feud, Superfly Jimmy Snuka here. And he's just about to turn babyface, whether it be the fans turning him, whether it be Albano turning on him. Superfly was red hot, and he was about to break away from Captain Lou Albano. And this is one of your last looks, actually the last look of Superfly on the cover as a heel with his manager. We all seen what happened with Ray Stevens on TV when Stevens turned on Snuka, and they all beat him and broke his neck on television. Here's the program for Snuka getting his hands on Captain Lou. November 22nd, 1982 at the Garden. This was my old program. That's my old ticket stub sitting there. And a couple of months later, I was super excited to see the Wrestling Scene cover that came out that had the match on the front cover. And I always thought it was cool. There's not many magazine covers that from an event that I was actually at that make the cover. And this was one of, I think, like 3 of them. So this was always held a special place for me because, the only way you're ever going to see this again was on the magazines. There was no, VCRs. We didn't record shit. They were just basically coming out in like 83, and only if you were rich. So, the only color scenes of Snuka we would see is on the cover or on television, unless you took your own photos, and they were usually pretty terrible because we never had, that great of seats to get them. But I really always, like I said, held a special place with me because I was there to see that one. Snuka now with his new manager, Buddy Rogers, on the cover of the Garden photo. He's taking on Buddy Rose here, but what is about to change is Pedro Morales is dropping the title to the Magnificent Muraco here for the second time at the Garden, and this is January 22nd card for 1983, and Muraco wins that belt. Here's Muraco on his first front cover as the Intercontinental Champion, and this would kick off a feud with Jimmy Snuka that would continue on for the next 8 to 9 months. Here is a 8x10. It's a signed by Don. Pretty good looking shot of him standing on the top ropes. Not a lot of magazine coverage with this. I mean, there was some, but nothing like you would see with like Flair and Race or Dusty and Flair or stuff like that. This got a lot of, filled up a lot of arenas, but it really didn't get a lot of coverage on the magazines. The first one being the very first WWF magazine Victory, and they put their bout on the cover of their first issue. And this is actually a pretty sought-after issue. Wrestling World would put that match on their cover, and that is Superfly Snuka here getting his hair pulled, and Muraco, pulling him up to the ring. Good-looking cover for Wrestling World. And then here is a Garden program, Backlund and Slaughter having their feud at the time. But here is the Garden program. Backlund taking on George the Animal and for the Intercontinental title. Muraco taking on Superfly July 30th, 1983. And this is when this is what, number 102. So this is the second issue of the new program style that they came out with. McMahon no longer going with Norman Kietzer and the Wrestling News' layout. McMahon got his own magazine, and now he's doing his own program style. So gone is any of the older programs that, I love them. I thought they were great, and the company ones I hated. So I really kind of lost interest in them. I have the first couple of years, but after that, really kind of gave up on collecting anything from the WWF anyway. But it was nice. It was color. It was sharp looking, but it didn't have shit. It was mostly advertisements for stuff, and it just really didn't talk about anything good. Superfly on the cover of the Main Event Wrestling, and he is coming down on top of the Magnificent One in February of 1983. That would lead up, like I said, several months back and forth with these two till their steel cage match at the Garden, which was the most infamous one. And here's just a couple of color shots. Like I said, the insides of these are great, of course. They have real close-ups, and there's some great photos, but not a whole lot. And then, right to the T-shirts and the tampons and the cookies and everything else that McMahon pushes down your throat. That's pretty much the layout of these programs. But the main night, October 17th, 1983, the return Intercontinental title inside of a steel cage, Muraco versus the Superfly right here. And that would be the ending of their feud, almost the ending of the WWF as we know it. Hulk Hogan was around the corner, and things were about to change tremendously. Superfly now walking out of the cage, one of my favorite issues from Japan after the bout with Magnificent Muraco. The only cover that would cover this match was right here, and sadly there wasn't much at all. You think that would be on a lot for his amount of people that were hyped for that feud, and as popular as it was in the Northeast, you figure they would have gotten some more coverage. So moving on to the next, we got taking a look at Dusty Rhodes, his battles with Harley Race, and these are going to actually get more publicity because there's a world championship involved. So the first two we looked at kind of on a smaller scale, but still huge impact when it came to a feud in the territory and filling up arenas and then smaller arenas, man. People went absolutely crazy. They wanted to see Larry get the shit beat out of him. Dusty and Race, I think we're going to draw anyway. You could put them in the middle of anywhere and as the main event, and they were going to be the main event, and that was your selling power. So what we looked at earlier was a few main events where neither one of them were champion and they were headlining. That's kind of hard, to outdo the main champion on the card. That speaks pretty loud. But here, former soon-to-be champion Dusty Rhodes taking on Harley Race here as they December of 1980. We also got the battle here with Zabisco and Bruno on the cover of this one as well. The last tango in Tampa, Race and Rhodes go up against 20,000 fans. All right, so here's 1980, right? December, so let's see, November, so probably September, and then the other show from Shea Stadium was that summer. So they're within a month or two of each other. But the Shea Stadium show got Bruno in a cage with Zabisco, 41,000. And here's Tampa getting 20,000 for the world title shot. So big difference in drawing for sure. I mean, I know you can't compare the states. It's two different territories. I get it. But I'm just saying, that 41,000 people, that's a lot of people. Dusty takes the world title from Dusty Rhodes and shocks the world and finally gets a victory over his nemesis, Harley Race. This is a grapevine program for the Florida territory. The Japanese were the first people to put Dusty on the cover with the championship belt. And here's Harley just before losing it. And Dusty with his first look with that world championship around his waist. And even the Arabic Turkish wrestling magazines would have Dusty Rhodes on the cover as a world champion. Great looking shot of Dusty if you just like a guy with a belt on the cover. Good looking shot, pretty rare photo, one of a kind for their territory, which was pretty cool in their magazines. Back home here, he gets a real small one. Inside Wrestling, November 1980, and Dusty is on a smaller shot. He gets a bigger shot here, but not much. During his second reign, he did a little bit. But Inside Wrestling, the December 79, the title goes from Race to Rhodes and to Race again, just that fast. It was a Tommy Rich kind of a championship there. Not that quick, but pretty damn close. I think he had less than a week, and Dusty was what, maybe 3 weeks, something like that, a little bit less, give or take. Didn't have it for very long. In the time of one pressing for the magazines, he was able to cover both coverages, from both title changes there. So that is pretty darn quick. Good looking shot of Harley here, all mean with the blood pouring down his face. But I always like this photo, man. This was a great shot of him back in the locker room, and everyone pouring the beers over his head. You see all the guys you can count for how many guys you know. I'm sure you guys know who half of them are. Steve Kern and Buzz Sawyer and Manny Fernandez and the world champion, former world champion Briscoe. So Harley gets the title back, and Harley is back on the cover again. The kind of belt cover that Dusty should have had here, but they're giving it to Harley, and he is once again the world champ. January of 1980. Also, the Sheik is taking on Backlund in Detroit in a title versus title for the U.S. title versus the WWF title. Race and Dusty would continue their feud throughout the country. This is something that they took on. You could take on the road and go from every town to St. Louis to Florida, out west, up north, and they did it. They did it in the Garden together as well in 79 or 80 or so. They took that everywhere, and it was huge. It was popular, and everyone was digging it. And they, like I said, they made a few title changes back and forth, which was cool. Just another shot of Inside Wrestling, June of 81. And special year annual issue. Again, Dusty and Harley. A lot of covers for this feud. This is a feud, like I said, we're going from like the mid-70s and run all the way up until the early to mid-80s. These guys would have a ton of bouts together, like I said, everywhere. Dusty on the cover October of 81. And taking on Harley again. And Dusty is going to get the title back one more time. Here they are on May 1980, and on cover of PWI. Another one. There's so many of them with Dusty and Harley, I couldn't use them all. I only grabbed the ones that were big, and they're kind of just them two on the cover. Otherwise, the video would never end with these two. And here's Dusty, getting the title again, and this is. I can't even see this one. Oh, spring of 1980, which is an annual issue of Victory Sports series with Dusty as the champ. Dusty would lose the title to an up-and-coming Nature Boy Ric Flair. And this is January of 1982's issue of Inside Wrestling. And new NWA champion Ric Flair, which way will he take the title? And a good-looking picture here. We're going to show a real close-up one here in 1 second of him just after winning that. Florida Grapevine program and also magazine, which was like Wrestling News as well, putting it on their cover when Flair wins the world title from the Grapevine. And here's that color picture I was telling you about. As soon as he won the title, holding up the belt, I got this at High Spot Sports. Long time ago, they had it for sale, and I grabbed. There was only a handful of them. They had Ric Flair defeats Dusty Rhodes for the NWA Heavyweight title, 8x10. And that coverage with Flair is in this PWI issue, on the cover of this PWI issue on January of 1982. Also, Backlund here defeats Hulk Hogan in Japan and won the trophy as the number one foreigner to come to Japan in that tournament they had throughout the year, who would be the best. And the final two came down to Hogan and Backlund took the title, and there he is with that trophy, in case you're wondering what that was. Flair and Dusty continue now to battle on, and this is a feud, like I said, it started in, I can document it in the magazines now as early as 1975 down in Florida, and I showed several magazines with those guys, very bloodied up in 75 when that feud kicked off, and it would go on for the next 10 to 12 years after their 75 run. Here is just another big event show that's not exactly on a Starrcade or anything kind of a level by any means, but it was a big enough show for Florida called the Lord of the Ring, and at the end of the event, the winner from the night would be crowned with the diamond and gold ring, and Dusty was the winner. He is holding that ring up in his knuckles there. He defeated Ric Flair for the Lord of the Ring. Then I'm making a video about that, actually, too. Released a lot of matches on video, but I don't think those matches. So they would continue on. Dusty would be trying to get his title back from Flair and always coming up short, never been able to really put the Nature Boy's shoulders to the mat. And now the build up onto Starrcade 84. Here's a program to Starrcade 84. And we were thinking, this is going to be Dusty's best shot. He's going to get the title. And comes up short. This is March of 85, Sports Review. Starrcade 84. This has got every match is covered inside this issue here. Sports Review did it great. They did it for the Bash. They did it for the Starrcades, even WrestleManias, even the AWA shows like Pro Wrestling USA's shows. The Sports Review always covered like the bigger events, and this was their kickoff. They didn't cover that much in Starrcade 83, a little bit, but now they got hot for it. And from here on out, for the next let me see, what is this, 84? Next 4 or 5 years, it would be Sports Review that did most of the coverage for the bigger events. And Main Event Wrestling on the cover here of Dusty and Flair. And the $1 Million Showdown, that's right, Starrcade 84 was the $1 Million Showdown with Joe Frazier. You know what, now that I'm thinking about it, I gave a lot of shit to Starrcade 85. With Starrcade 84, I don't like. That was one of the reasons I didn't want to buy the program of Starrcade 85, because I thought it was that event with Joe Frazier. And no, it's 84. I'm just catching that now. Sorry for speaking shit of 85. I have to go back and recheck that out. It's been years. But no, I guess it was 84 I couldn't stand. I don't know, I found it like a boring card. I just really didn't dig it. 83 was great, and then, Bash 85 and 86 were great. 87 actually too. Yeah. Joe Frazier cost Dusty Rhodes the belt and the money because of boxing rules. They stopped the match if there's too much blood, and like Joe didn't know, right? That's okay. Dusty didn't lose. It wasn't his fault. He gives him a chance to come back for another time, and they do at Starrcade 85. Like I said, with Dusty and Harley, I can't show every magazine with Flair and Dusty. There's just way too many, so I'm just showing you the big ones. And like I said a minute ago, for Starrcade 84, this is the following year's March of 86, and it's showing Starrcade 85. The match took place in 85. The magazines lag, so it would be released in March of 86. But we're still in 1985. And all the coverage here, Dusty Rhodes, and what happened in Starrcade 85. Starrcade 85. And of course, Dusty didn't win again. So kind of everyone's like, what the hell? Keeps getting the rug pulled out from under him. They've been bleeding buckets every territory they went. I don't think Dusty's ever going to get it now. It's just, the fans were getting fed up, and it was just like, he wins, and then they have they pull the rug out from under the fans and, pull it at the last minute, notorious Dusty finish stuff. And here's Dusty on his way to the ring. Then Wrestling 85, Springs issue, same look on the cover of All-Star Wrestling, February 85 with Dusty. Pro Wrestling USA and the expansion of pro wrestling blew in cable, and it blew up everywhere. Now we're all seeing wrestlers who we've never seen before live or on video TV. The only way we got to see them were in the magazines, and now they're appearing in our territories. And what a time it was. Night of the Champions 2 featured in the Meadowlands, Flair taking on Dusty for the title, and Stan Hansen challenging Rick Martel for the AWA belt. And Hansen would take the AWA belt on this night, December 29th, 1985. Dusty again would come up short. And here it is on the magazines. Burning hatred for Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes. Fans are like, come on, it's getting old. We're watching these guys, we want Dusty to win. Flair's pissing us off. The Four Horsemen are about to form. Things are about to go crazy and change. Almost though, Dust, almost. He's coming. Here is Championship Wrestling magazine on August of 1986. And it's got Flair and Dusty and a bloody battered. Look at Dusty's arm, all that scar tissue. The same as his forehead up there, man. They really I'm not sure if the camera's pulling all that in, but you can see the head and the arm there. Totally sliced up from the wars that these two animals had together. Starcade's over, but the feud rages on. Dusty and Flair, who cannot survive 1986 and another bloody bout in April of 1986. Now we get to the summer of 86. Crockett's biggest event, the Great American Bash, 1986, which was probably my favorite of all their bigger shows from Crockett. Without a doubt, Bash 86 was my favorite. And not just like the VHS tape. I'm talking about the whole summer and that being on tour, and then I'm going to city, and then the DVDs that came out later on where they have all the tape from all those shows that were recorded, and you're able to watch them all from different arenas. What a great show! What a great setup! What a great summer, really, is what I should say. Bash 86 was without a doubt my favorite, and some of the best matches at the time. And Dusty finally pulls it off in a steel cage match, defeats Ric Flair for the world title. And Big Dust looks really good with that belt, made for him. The other one was a little bit too small, but it was perfect for Dusty's size. December of 86, PWI. Dusty is, again, the world champion for the third time. And now he's getting some respect like he should have gotten before. And here he is on the cover of All-Star Wrestling. Great looking shot. Pretty much the same photo shoot. That was, the PWI cover. And he would not hold that belt long, sad to say. By the end of the tour, the end of the bash, I think there was 13 bashes that year. And by the 13th show, Dusty would have already lost the title back to Ric Flair. And this is from the match when he would actually he would lose the title back here on this issue. And just trying to find it, April of 1987. So like I said, especially Wrestling World, they were almost every other month for a while. And then sometimes every 2 months, and then they went to it every month. They were kind of sporadic with theirs, and they had quite a bit of lag time with releases as well. Another Wrestling World issue, 87, same match, Dusty and Flair. Flair getting the title back again. Flair regains the world title from Dusty is the tagline on the far right. The Wrestler putting Ric Flair back on the cover. Ric Flair's fourth title reign. Last chance to quiet the critics. Who the hell's the critic on Flair? He was the best. Nobody could beat him, and he went on to continue another 20 years of it. So critics usually don't know shit. Superstar Wrestler, new magazine that just came out in 86, and they are featuring this on their December issue. So I think they had 5 issues in 86, maybe 4. You have to check out the Superstar Wrestler videos to double check to make sure, but I think there was 4. And Flair gets the last issue of the year, and it's for the Bash 86 coverage. Wrestling Scene putting on one of their bloodier bouts in issue number 29. I hate when April's issue here. Like I said with these before, I said it many times, they'll either put the date or they'll put the issue number, and just seeing the issue number is very annoying. You have to turn to the page on the inside of the magazine. Page 1 will tell you the date of them all. So a lot of times they weren't on the covers. Let's fix this here. Okay. Again, back on the cover of Championship Wrestling, February of 1987, Dusty and Flair once again really bloodied up. And this is October of 1987. This is at the War Games. You can see the cage over top of Dusty's head, and he's got Flair into the ring ropes. That was the big 5-on-5 at the Great American Bash War Games, which was in 87. Okay, so that'll wrap it up with Dusty Rhodes and Flair. Now we're going to take a look now at Flair's nemesis, and that would be Harley Race. He would try to get his title back many times, just like Dusty was trying to get his title back. Race was hot on the heels of Ric Flair, and they would have also some of the bloodiest matches up and down the East Coast, out west, outside the country, in Japan, New Zealand, Singapore. And we're going to look at a lot of those matches here in some of these magazines where they had this feud. Probably, one of the best feuds. Wrestling was, now we're back down in 1981 again, to 81, 82, where Flair is the champion, and wrestling is still really special. It hasn't blown up yet. It's still in the private small clubs, and you're still getting all your information from the magazines, and no television yet unless you lived in that territory. It was just a great feud between those two. One of my favorites, without a doubt. And I only caught the tail end of theirs. Basically, I was more... When the time I got TV up here, I was more Dusty and Flair, and I missed out on a lot of that TV up until later on when I got a lot of tape trading shit. But PWI talking about Flair, why he hates being champion, October of '82. Flair and Dusty, Ric Flair, I'll die before I let Harley Race become the 7th-time world champion. And as he says that on this issue, Harley Race is now the 7th-time world champion. This is February '83 Sports Review. And Harley is back as champion again. Harley Race back on top on the cover of Main Event. There's a poster. I took it out. And they give you a pin-up poster of Harley with the belt. Great looking poster. This was one that I have another issue that I didn't pull it out of, but if you're looking for this issue, make sure it says the poster on the top is Harley. Make sure you get that with that. Like I said before, no poster, no deal. It's got to have the poster for sure. That was a selling point of those other magazines. That was what they needed to compete with Aftermags, because the Aftermags did no color at all, so that was an easy one. Color posters, fuck yeah, we're gonna take it. Besides PWI, they did their centerfolds, but I mean the other magazines, they didn't have 15 publications like London Publishing did. Probably one of my all-time favorite magazine covers, Flair and Harley on the cover. Harley Race defeats Ric Flair for the NWA World Title, October '83. They're both a bloody mess. This is a match that would take place in Japan. We're going to look at the color photos of that in a minute. Flair and Dusty once again on November ringside issue, and dropping the hammer elbow down onto Harley. Harley takes the title, and Harley gets his PWI cover, his first PWI cover as champion, and he'll also be his... One of these has a color. You know what? It was a different issue to put out a poster with him. It was the one with Rick Martel on the cover. But here's the poster that they should have put in here with it. Another one of my favorite shots of Harley in this poster. What a great poster this is. Just holding the belt all the way out. You don't see very many poses like that. Superstar Billy Graham would do that, but not many guys would. Especially Harley. He'd either have it folded and carried under his arm, or he's wearing a fucking thing. He wasn't like some ego guy like Superstar was. But great shot of that. One of my favorite posters. And that, like I said, that's not this issue. It doesn't have that. That's the one with Rick Martel, same year. Or it may have been it was the '84 year, actually. But yeah, great looking shot of Harley now on his last run, his 7th, or is it his last? Now this is the build up now, so we've been, Flair is now seeking the title. Harley had another couple of months run, and that was a build up for Starrcade '83, and then the very first big one to kick it all off. This is signed by Harley and Flair. A bunch of autographs inside as well, but that's the program. That's my ticket stub on the back. Not my ticket stub, the ticket stub of the guy who went there. Actually, I had a friend of mine who got that for me from a guy, and he had the ticket with it. Man, I was super lucky to get that when I did. Flair takes the title back after a grueling cage match with Harley Race for the title, and he's on the cover of the Sports Review, and they're covering all of the Starrcade issues in '83 here in March of '84. Like I said, Sports Review was the one that would do all the big shows that covered it all. Main Event, wrestling, the brushing elbows with Bill Apter would be George Napolitano, and he captured a fantastic cover shot here with Flair, very similar to the Sports Review, but this is Main Events. Great looking shot. All-Star Wrestling, another Napolitano shot, and looking at the two in the cage match, got a lot of publicity, and really, cemented Ric Flair in as the man, and he was the guy to beat going forward. A lot of people cashed Harley's Race's chips in, but he was far from done. As champion, I'm saying. Flair makes his first trip to Japan with the title. And here he is on the front cover of Pro Wrestling Deluxe, 1984's issue. Flair now back on the cover of PWI, now with the suit. Very popular issue, became popular among the fans, and a sought after one. I never really cared for it because I just don't, like him in a suit. I'm going to see some jacked up dude with the belt or somebody bloodied more than see somebody in a suit. But I mean, it is a fancy looking magazine cover. Don't get me wrong. Japan also covering that issue in the Pro Wrestling Power, Speed, and Spirit Exciting Pro issue. And like I said, people are starting to, what's Harley got left in the tank? It's a long road back for him. Is he ever going to become champion again? Absolutely he will. But not many people were going to know about it. Shortly after Starrcade, they would take this match that they had together on the road and go to New Zealand and Singapore. This is the Japanese magazine that covered Harley Race's win in New Zealand for the 8th time. Now, he would go around telling people he was an 8-time champion. NWA didn't recognize it for the longest time, but legitimately pinned Flair and won the belt. You can see him here holding up 8 fingers as the 8 times world champion. And this is the same cover that we've seen on that main event issue a little while ago when Harley won the title. Very good, very similar to that. If you look back at this, even though that's not the same picture, very similar. Like I said, they would do the same match. They're not going to know one state from the next, let alone one country to the next. So they can get away with shit like that. It wasn't recorded and pumped in your face like it is now with the internet and TV. Here's Harley at the end, having his hands raised here and pinning Flair. Now this match would automatically change hands on the flight over to Singapore, so there was no return bout. Here they are in New Zealand again. Dusty in the back with his World Championship belt. And this is just about Harley, blah, blah. Okay, so now a couple days later, Flair and Harley now are in Singapore. Flair is announced as the World Heavyweight Champion. No one really knew about the title loss, the next continent over. And in Singapore, Harley captures the All-Asian World Heavyweight title in Singapore, and it would be a title versus title match world title match with Flair. He would continue to hold the All-Asian title here in Singapore. Flair would win the bout, and that's how he would reclaim his title back again, beating Harley Race. So, like I said, a lot of this was never talked about, and it was in print. Japan knew about it. Other countries, of course, knew about it, but we here in America were never any wiser to it. Great looking feud there. Like I said, that went everywhere from Japan, Singapore, New Zealand, Mexico, North America, South America, you name it. Flair and Harley had it. Now, I was telling you before that the cover of the magazine of the what was it? The Wrestler, with those two blocked up and bloodied on the cover. And I said it took place in Japan. Here's the match here, and here's how blood-soaked Flair is here. What a mess he is on this one. Good-looking shot of these two. I think that's the only page with them two. Okay, this goes back to Flair now beating Kerry Von Erich for the world title, taking the title back from Kerry. And here's Kerry defending the title in Japan. He had a couple of title defenses before he would lose it to Flair. And when Kerry was still champ, the kickoff of their tour, which is this tour, the 84 Grand Champion Carnival, Harley took on Flair when Flair wasn't the champion, and he got a pinfall win over Flair, which automatically put him right back to the #1 contender spot. Here he is again. So he's still winning matches. He's still pinning Flair. It's still going forward and winning titles. Harley was far from finished. Now with the expansion of cable television, and we're back up to that date again now, Star Wars 85, this was like the kickoff from the AWA when they had Pro Wrestling USA on television in the Northeast, and they were building this bout. So I think it was November is when I first noticed that the AWA was on TV with the NWA. And Ken Resnick was the announcer who was building up the Star Wars 85 big event. So again, now we're getting Flair and Dusty. Flair and Race for the world title on this show. It's just a program for it. The matches were covered, like I said, sports review issues. This is the June issue of Pro Wrestling USA's Showdown at the Meadowlands. And here's Harley and Flair. Now he's going for the world title in the New York, New Jersey area. Coming up short. Rick Martel defended the title against handsome Jimmy Garvin. And both guys were coming up short. Main Event magazine, and they got their full coverage of Star Wars 85. Harley here with Flair. Also Mr. T in WrestleMania with Hogan, and Martel with the Garvin. Also Wrestling USA is covering it. A second chance at greatness, where they're talking about Flair's second time as champion. Coverage of the match, though, that photo was from Jersey. And then once again, I don't know where this is from. It's a very bloody Flair. They're both wearing red trunks, and they're in a steel cage match. Don't know where that's from. I wish I knew. There's nothing like that inside this issue either. There's nothing to read up on it, because these are like mostly recycled stories, but they're using newer pictures to catch you in for the photo, thinking it's newer. But Star Wars 85, like, it was a big event. It was very successful. I forget how many they had, 18,000 maybe? Something like that. I mean, I don't think it was sold out, but it was close. I know their next one dropped tremendously, and then they continued to drop from there, but it didn't last. But their first show, they did really well. Star Wars 85 on the cover of Wrestling Scene. Good looking shot of Flair now, and Dusty on the East Coast. And Wrestling World, of course, covering it the same. So like I said, Harley wasn't finished by any means. He would still go on and capture championships. After the Star Wars 85 run, he went back to Japan and beats the Giant Baba, and he becomes the PWF, Pacific Wrestling Federation, which is All Japan's heavyweight championship title. And here he is up front here with that belt and the trophy as the world champion now from All Japan Wrestling. And there's the Baba bloodied up, and Harley continues to rack up championships. Not only that, I have a big poster here, so I try to fit it in all the way. He would go to Dick the Bruiser's territory and capture the WWA Heavyweight Championship belt. And here's a poster from Japan with Harley and the WWA belt right there. He held this several times, just like the Missouri title. But this was still considered a world title, even though Dick the Bruiser's territory was, pretty much in dire straits by that time in 85 or so. It was just a shell of its former self. Sheik's territory had closed up. That territory was kind of like, down in the tubes and off the radar for their magazines as well. Flair would take on Harley, but Harley challenging for the title now as the Missouri heavyweight champion, challenging Flair for the world heavyweight title on September 20th, 1985. And this is a program from St. Louis, and you see Harley again with the belt. So like I said, he would continue on for a good while. He would go on to Puerto Rico and win the Caribbean heavyweight championship title too after his WWF run. So that must have been, 88 or so, something like that. And the guy had some longevity, one of my favorite wrestlers, and really entertained, and what a great champion, probably the best heavyweight champion of all time, without a question for me anyway. It's like, you ask me tomorrow, it's Bruno, and then you ask me again, it'll be Flair, but the Harley, without a doubt. I mean, you can't just pick one. But if you had to pick one, one NWA champion, Harley. I'd say Harley was the best. So now we're going to take a look, not so much as a feud. I'm going to pit this whole country, Puerto Rico as island, I should say, as a feud, because there was nothing but a hot mess down there, man. Every match was brutal and violent and bloody, and the fans were bloodthirsty, and Carlos Colon delivered it. We're going to look at some of the issues that cover the Puerto Rico WWC, World Wrestling Council, on the cover, which wasn't very often. It would usually be, Carlos, if it was anybody, or the Invaders a little bit. But we're going to look at some Puerto Rico issues as well, from the Superstars and the Lucha Libre magazines. Here's a good looking shot of Carlos with the championship belt. He would drop that belt to Ox Baker. They had a feud in '83. Ox Baker here with his manager carrying the world championship. These magazines were like paper. The same cover of the magazine was like the inside pages to our magazine. It wasn't a glossy paper. It was like, newspaper, front and back. So they really hard to get these in good shape. They didn't hold up long. There was only a handful of pages in them, not many, maybe 12. And they're super hard to find. They're very, very expensive if you find them at all. The Puerto Rico stuff can cost you a pretty big buck. Bruiser Brody in the Puerto Rico locker room at the stadium before a match in this the Arabic issue of pro wrestling from Turkey. Wrestling Scene is showing the blood bouts between Brody and Carlos Colon. Brody just biting down on the skull of Carlos. What a great shot that is if you're a gore fan like myself. And nobody bled is better and fought better than Abdullah, Brody, Carlos. I mean, these guys were the pinnacle in Puerto Rico, and Wrestling Scene would always seem to capture the bloodiest ones, which thank God for them. Great magazine. Here is another Lucha Libre issue with the Invaders taking on the Sheep Herders, and they had some ridiculously bloody bouts. And the Invaders were no strangers to bleeding either. Cut right through the mask. They'd be gushing blood. Didn't matter. And here they are on the cover of our Wrestling Scene against the Sheep Herders again. How dare I call them the Bushwhackers? In a barbed wire match, getting the barbed wire through the forehead. Great looking cover that is on Wrestling Scene. Macho Man Savage in 1984 leaves Memphis after dropping the Memphis title to Idol and comes down and challenges Carlos Colon for the World Wrestling Council heavyweight title. Comes up short, but beats Pedro Morales for the this is a match. This is a program between Savage and Carlos. This is a program here now against Pedro Morales. The date September of 1984. Pedro drops the title to the Macho Man on Wrestling Superstars issue, and here is his first and only cover, Macho Man, with the WWC North American Heavyweight Championship title. Road Warriors are also on the cover here with them on their 11th anniversary. Only magazine you'll see with Macho Man Savage with the Puerto Rico Championship. Very rare, very hard to find, and I got one in most ridiculously good condition. It's crazy. Here's a better shot of Mach that we showed before, but this gives you a better look at the belt and him here. So the other one was black and white, just where you can see it a little bit. Good looking shot of Macho Man there. Love these early rare matches of him, especially his Memphis years, ICW years, man. That's when I loved him the most. After like 85 or 86 or so, just different wrestler, different time, and just kind of lost interest. But always a fan still of his for sure anyway. Superstar Billy Graham getting his crack at Carlos for the world title in Puerto Rico on Wrestling World, September of 85. Andre the Giant battles Abdullah the Butcher in a series of matches in Puerto Rico, making the cover. This is also on a couple of Japanese covers as well. No blood in this match, but a kind of a lame match. I have it on video. It wasn't that great. At least the one that I had wasn't that great. It was actually this issue because they show this same exact scene in the video, but they had a bunch of matches. So I'm sure some of the other ones were bloody. They had to have been. This is a bout with Abdullah the Butcher and the Raging Bull that started in the Mid-Atlantic Crockett territory and moved down into Puerto Rico in the WWC, and they would continue to feud down there. And there's a great shot of the Bull getting bloodied up here. And here's just a better, closer upper shot here with Abdullah autographed. And just look at the great bloody face of the Raging Bull. Great shot. Continuing on in Puerto Rico, Hercules Ayala taking on Carlos Colon for the heavyweight championship. The title changes here at this fire match, the first one and only first fire matches to ever take place, and it happened in Puerto Rico, and they actually did it right. I mean, the one in Japan fell apart. I think asshole McMahon even tried one or some stupid shit. It was ridiculous, but these guys did it right, man. They had certain sections, they had certain fires. They kept the fires going as they went out. They put more shit on it, kept it burning. I mean, they should have took a play out of their book, but nobody else followed the same pattern with that. And this way, you could contain the heat, and the guys won't get hurt. And you have a guy standing there with buckets waiting, instead of, you know, being like the Sheik and having half your skin fall off your back and put in a coma, for Christ's sake. Another program now with the Invaders as the Caribbean tag team champions, and talking about the Road Warriors that were going to come in to challenge these guys. And I think that would be a no-brainer. That would be the Invaders getting invaded upon. Another good-looking shot of the Invaders here in 1979. This is a major league put out by Norman Kitezer program for Puerto Rico. These suckers are hard to find too. This one and Los Angeles territory, when Norman Kitezer put out their programs, super hard to find the Los Angeles ones and these here from Puerto Rico. I think I have 2 from Puerto Rico, maybe 3 from Los Angeles, and that's it. I mean, they're like extinct. Here's a better close-up of the Invaders in color, so you could see their masks. They would have white, they would have red, they would have blue. This was autograph 8x10 that I've had for a number of years. Ric Flair would come to town, challenge Carlos Colon, and it'd be title versus title. Flair would also do another title drop down there. I forget the dude's name. I'd have to look it up, but it was like another quick thing like they did in Singapore with Harley, and it was it wasn't really recognized like Harley's got recognized later on. But this wasn't the match, though, when I don't think Carlos ever won it. Unless there was another phantom match with Carlos winning it, but I know it wasn't. I know it was definitely this other guy. I just can't remember his freaking name right now. Let's see. Yeah, here's the bout taking place on the Lucha Libre issue from... this is, sanctioned by the NWA with these programs, and then these ones are strictly from Puerto Rico only. The only official magazine from Puerto Rico. It says right across the top, Lucha Libre Professional, which means wrestling professional. And these issues, like I said, these were a little bit better than the newspaper ones, but still definitely hard to find and hard to find in good shape. Of course, Abdullah the Butcher and Carlos Colon would bleed buckets everywhere. They wrestled. They took their same match all across the U.S. and Puerto Rico, and crafted it well and knew how to draw the fans in. This is probably one of the best feuds. Was Carlos and Abdullah. They even released those 2 figures from Abdullah and Carlos from the AWA line, those grudge matches. I have those figures somewhere. I have the ring and shit too. Half that shit I haven't pulled out in so many years. And now seeing this stuff, it kind of made me think about it again. Maybe I'll pull it out and see if I can find it and show what kind of condition they are. If they're in bad condition, I won't show them, but we'll check them out maybe in the next video. Wrestling scene again now. Abdullah taking on Colon, and a cover of let's see, the February's issue here, and as signed by both guys, Abdullah and Carlos. Good looking magazine, and one more with Carlos and Abdullah, and getting the object into the eye, blood screaming down their face. Hey, Mom, can you give me this magazine? What? Put that back. Luckily, I was in my teens by then, so I could get whatever I wanted. But no, I never had a parent like that. They never gave a shit. They never, it's like those 80s moms, kind of a little bit different. And then, 90s and 2000s, forget it. Fuck it. Moving on to another feud, Tommy Rich, Buzz Sawyer. Huge feud that went crazy through the Carolinas and Georgia Championship Wrestling. And these dudes spilt blood week and week and weeks and weeks on end. Main event starts out, the beginning of their feud, October of 82. And the battle has its way to the top, Tommy Rich. And another battle with Buzz Sawyer again. Now, if you're just a novice guy who, like me, went down to the local magazine shop in the city, probably somewhere in the Bronx or upper Manhattan, you walk in, who are these guys? Who's this guy wearing the headgear? What the fuck's going on? You're not realizing this is one of the bloodiest feuds that are taking place just below us, a few states underneath me. And we're about to find out as the magazines mature a little bit and we get into that feud. And Tommy Rich, an absolute bloody mess with the red shirt and knee pads and trunks, doesn't make it any less gruesome. Great looking shot with a black background and really bloodied up mug. You don't see anything like that anymore. Great shot of him is the end near for Tommy Rich if he keeps fighting like that with Sawyer? Probably. Another bloody one, man. This is signed by Kevin Sullivan. I didn't get this one signed by Tommy. And Buzz, of course, on the front cover, drenched in blood, May of '83. Last Battle of Atlanta, and this is when we're all like, okay, what the fuck are these dudes? I mean, they're going to kill each other. What are they in now? Look at this cage. There's a roof on it. There's no door. You know, right to the pages, wishing they were in color. Wanted to see more, but it was covers like this that just made you come back to that magazine stand every Tuesday, like clockwork after school. And it's like, what else is on the shelf, you know? Could not wait to grab shit like this. What a great looking shot. Ric Flair would have another feud with former tag team partner Greg the Hammer Valentine back in 78, 79. They were tag team champions of the world in the Mid-Atlantic territory, world champions. Soon they would break up, tempers would fly, and they would have a blood war that lasted several months, and a few magazines picked it up, not a whole lot. But this was one of them. This is April of '83. He's the wrestler, and Valentine wants a shot at the world title, and friendship is no more. And, wow, look at that cover. Hard magazine to find, too, man. I remember it taking me a long time to find this. I still wanted to get Valentine to sign it because I just haven't been to any shows in years. Flair, for that matter, too. But I really didn't go to many shows. Flair was that, just a handful. And usually, you know, now his prices are ridiculous. I wouldn't pay that kind of shit. But Valentine was still signing something for $20 for you. And that's how it should be. But great looking cover, these two, man. The war rages on between Valentine and Flair. And then once again, on a real bloody cover here of the wrestler in '81. On the bottom, got Anderson and Dusty. So it was a short feud in the magazines, not a whole lot of coverage, just 3 issues covering that, but a bloody war without a doubt. Making his return after the tie-dye and the World Championship run, Superstar Graham made an embarrassing comeback for most of his fans anyway. We're like, what the hell happened to this dude? You know, what is this gimmick? It's ridiculous. You know, is this some kind of a joke? And more like a nightmare than a joke. But, you know, in his WWF return, it was pretty bad. Shortly after that, in '83, after he leaves, he makes a run down to Florida at Billy Jack, and Billy Jack is now the Florida heavyweight champion, and he's coming after the title. On the cover here with Billy Jack, also Woman, her first magazine cover that she's ever been featured on, Nancy Benoit. Trying to find a date here. June of 1984. Billy Jack, wrestling's new sex symbol in Florida. Billy Jack on the cover of a Grapevine issue. Billy's putting it all together, going after the Florida title. And there's Billy Jack after the Florida title and another Grapevine program. And he, of course, he captures the Florida title. Good shot of Billy, color shot of him with the Florida belt. Always loved the Florida belt for some reason. It was just the way the silver and gold and blue and red popped off the plate. It was small but not too big and clunky. I just always liked that one. One of my favorite, for sure. I mean, right here is like one of my favorite covers of two guys jacked up, muscled up, and it's just a great looking cover when you're, what is this, 84? So I was almost, I guess, 15. So yeah, I mean, that's when I'm in the weight training and working out, and I was like, you see these dudes, you want to be just like them, like, I want to get that big, you know? Didn't realize, you know, you needed a full syringe to get that bigger. But Kerry Von Erich, the NWA champ, and Billy Jack on the cover now, making his way through almost every magazine cover in '84. You name it, Billy Jack has been pushed, and he is really making a name for himself, and you really think he's going to amount to something. Him and Magnum TA both are really exploded around this time. The Japanese issues are putting the same two out. This is when Kerry won the title from Flair at the Parade of Champions you know, when David passed away, he won the title. Right after winning that, he made his run to Florida, and he would take on, down there, he would take on Graham. He would take on a few guys for the title. But so they caught him and Billy Jack together. So there was a lot of cameras when they were together for these events at the Orange Bowl. So it just so happened to be the event that Billy Jack lost the title. Here is another one now, Victory Sports. Kevin Sullivan on the cover, but it's got also those two guys as world champion. So all this is happening. Superstar Graham left the WWF, and Superstar is back. Former heavyweight Florida champion, Superstar Billy Graham, is back in Florida with his new look for the first time, and he wants his title back. And right away, he starts making challenges to Billy Jack. And they had a few pose-down competitions. They had an arm wrestling competition match. Billy ends up breaking his forearm. Not Billy. Billy Jack broke his forearm. Graham broke it. And that was, part of their storyline as, why Graham would probably win the title. Yeah, here's the cover now, the program of Grapevine. This was also on their TV match. This was televised for people to see. Superstar taking on Billy Jack. And the match that took place, and these guys would be on a shitload of covers. Superstar back in the limelight and the glory of a cover of a magazine again, being respected rather than looking like an idiot. And he was on a few with the WWF, but he was on some great bloody covers from Florida, and they were because of the wars with Billy Jack for sure. The Wrestler had it. 84 October's issue. November's Inside Wrestling's issue. 84 had it. Great looking shot of both those dudes. Championship Wrestling, January of 85's issue. I guess this was a 4-time-a-year issue, so this was lagged, of course. By the time of 85, the war was already over, but that's just how far back they were. Main Event also put it on their cover. Good looking shot of the Full Nelson. They had the Full Nelson challenge match. If you could break the Full Nelson, you'll win $10,000. You win the arm wrestling match, you'll win this, you'll win that. Every gimmick was pulled. Every one of them was gold for those two guys. And it showed. I mean, it's on every single magazine cover you can think of. Even in Japan, same deal. Great looking shot before all the blood in one of the matches here of Superstar and Billy Jack. Superstar wins the Florida title. And finally gets some recognition for being back and being the Superstar again, managed by Sir Oliver Humperdinck. Program from Florida Grapevine with Superstar, 8x10 Superstar with the Florida belt with Oliver Humperdinck. And inside this Japanese issue, we'll show the event. And here's Dusty and Flair battling, like we just talked about. Here's Kevin Sullivan and Blackjack Mulligan. That's another feud. There's not really any magazine coverage with those guys. And a one-page shot of Superstar and Billy Jack here. And Billy Graham is in the Full Nelson. Graham takes the title. Good-looking shot right there. So that's in this issue here, so this is July of 1984. What happened to Superstar? What happened was his friend and partner Kevin Sullivan turned on him. The feud with Billy Jack is over, and now Superstar is about to turn face and take on Kevin Sullivan. And then they would have a good little bloody war. Several different runs. Superstar would come back a year later with all the color, and they would go at it again. This is February of 85 Sports Review, and Kevin Sullivan, the devil, with Superstar. Superstar had to go out to the desert and sweat the demons out of him, get him out of his system, and get healed from the curse of Kevin Sullivan. All that was on great Florida TV. A year later, Superstar, he would go back to Mid-Atlantic. He would bring back the color and the tie-dye, and then he would make one final run through Florida, up through the WWF, and then into the independents, and then out to pasture. But another Grapevine now with Superstar in 85 as the back with the color, showing it off. Right away, the feud picked up with Kevin Sullivan and Kevin Sullivan's people. One of them being the Purple Haze, Mark Lewin, who was older and way past his prime from a guy who was around in the 50s wrestling. Here he is jacked and bigger than ever in 85 and 86 wrestling with Superstar on a bloody cover of Championship Wrestling. Kevin Sullivan would, like I said, he would have a great feud with Dusty Rhodes. We were just talking about the feud he had with Graham, but the one with Dusty would last for as long as Sullivan was in Florida, and he was there a lot of years. Dusty would come in and out, and then the feud would pick back up again. Kevin Sullivan now is is he the Southern champion here? He's either the Southern or the Florida belt. It's black and white. I can only tell by the color when I see them. I want to say it's the Southern. I know he was a Southern champ, but I know he was the Florida champ too. I'm not sure. I'm going to say it's the Florida belt. And then these two would have a battle back and forth with the Golden Spike and Bob Roop and the Fallen Angel, and then Luna Vachon would come, get her head shaved, and then what the hell was that? She had a tag team partner in Memphis. Oh man, like Luna had the one half of her head shaved bald and the other half was long and blonde, and her tag team partner had the same hairstyle but the opposite side shaved and her other side was black. I forget what their name was. Oh, damn. I forgot who she was with Luna's partner. Fuck. That was good shit, man. I gotta try to find that. I know I got tapes of it somewhere. I forgot the bitch's name though, man. Damn. Anyway, that was a great flock he had. You know, Raven had his crew people, and different guys had their cliques. Kevin Sullivan had a kick-ass crew of people. Really did. That Florida was so believable. I mean, you just looked at these dudes, you're like, what the fuck is this? Especially, during a time when there was satanic panic and people were going crazy with the devil worshiping and the sacrifices and people getting killed for sacrifices, praising the devil and listening to Motley Crue and you're following the wrong path and the Bible thumpers. Holy shit, man. It was a hell of a gimmick to pull off. A lot of balls. I'm surprised somebody tried to kill him. Probably too afraid of him. And Dusty taking on Sullivan again on the cover. Wrestling scene from Florida. Great looking shot. Man, the one last one here, but you don't see Kevin's face, but you see his boot. And Dusty is battling Sullivan here on Double Action Wrestling. Oh, this was stuck to the back. Kevin Sullivan with Woman, just an ace, signed 8x10 of the guy from Kevin. I liked it because of Fallen Angel, of course. Christ, look at her, man. Unreal. That brings us to the next feud, and we're winding down, closing into the last feud here. The fabulous Freebirds would go to Texas and battle the Von Erichs, and probably one of the best tag feuds ever. Certainly made the company, red hot and pissed a lot of people off and made a lot of people happy. On the other end of that was the Von Erich and Freebird war. As they're moving up, their first tag team championships were the national tag team titles, and these guys were responsible for the Freebird rule, meaning we're a tag team. Buddy Roberts and Bam Bam were the champions. They won the belt, but they can interchange, and Michael Hayes can grab the belt and also defend it. And that was a go, which was really cool. I mean, so all three of them were tag team champions pretty much as that went down, the Freebird rule, and it worked quite well in certain territories where they did it. And this is my signed issue. I got to put this away so I don't stick this in a pile where it gets fucked up. Also on the cover again now with the national titles on February of '81 of PWI, and here they are on the cover of Sports Review, August of '83. Freebirds and the Von Erich feud. Why Kerry wants out? Kerry wants out because he wants to take a world title run and can't be distracted by the Freebirds. The Von Erichs get the cover of Sports Review, September of '83, and it's got the three brothers and Fritz on the cover. David now gets one of the few covers the poor guy was on before he was tragically killed or died or however it happened, January of '84. This will be your last photo of the three brothers printed before David's death. This came as a poster. This is a thick, heavy card. You can't tell because I have it backing behind, but it's pretty thick paper. And it came in the Japanese issue, the Gong issues, and it was just before he passed away, before he left for the trip in Japan. So that's a pretty sought after magazine with that poster in it. And then David, finally, we will never forget you. Here he is with the Texas Championship belt. David gets the front cover. There is not a lot of coverage of the Freebirds and the Von Erichs on the covers. There was several in Dallas, from the homegrown magazines, and programs, but nothing on a major scale, which is sad. It was for such a big feud that go on for so long and be as violent as it was, and titles changing constantly between the tag team champions, the six-man tag team champions, and the America's title and whatnot. A lot of fights and a lot of title changes, but all of it went on deaf ears because the magazines weren't covering it. This is just the Freebirds. They're on their first tour in Japan for All Japan, and here are the Birds on the cover as the six-man World Tag Team Champions in World Class Championship Wrestling, or WCCW. Their tag team championships weren't belts yet early on. They were a trophy. So in this event here, they're getting ready to take on Fritz, Mike, and Kevin. And that would take place at the Parade of Champions. So it was like a Von Erich for the gold in the memorial David Von Erich Parade of Champions here. Flair would have supposedly taken on David for the world title had he not died. Kerry stepping up to the plate and taking his place, winning the world title. And Fritz, there's nothing in here. Fritz would take Fritz and the two sons would take the six-man tag team championship from the Freebirds. So the fans left the stadium, more than exhilarated and thrilled from that day, especially as a Von Erich fan. They did get a lot of coverage of the championship change, of course. Kerry beating Flair, and he was on one of a dozen magazines. We'll just go through them quick. Kerry is winning the title in the ring, holding up the championship belt. Great looking after shot of Kerry after winning the belt. PWI some weeks. Actually, this was several months later because he had already lost by the time this came out. Wasn't champion for very long. October issue of All-Star, pretty much the same pose, and a bloody bout here. He bled twice as champion, and then this is against the Freebird Bam Bam that caused this blood, and he bled again in Japan. But this match is before his Japan run. And then Flair, of course, would take the title back by the end of the tour in Japan when he went there. So that kind of ends out that saga, just showing, where that ended. I know it's a Freebird and Von Erich feud I'm talking about, but like I said, it's slim pickings for, who was covering what in America here on the major magazines. So shortly after, so Labor Day, so that was a few months before. I'm trying to give you the exact date here. Back in May, the tag team champions was Fritz and the two, David and Mike. I'm sorry, Kevin and Mike. They would lose the titles back to the Freebirds and would have belts. Now the Freebirds are the champions again, coming up on the Labor Day Spectacular in September, and they would have a battle again for the titles for the six-man. And Kerry, Mike, and Kevin would win the six-man tag team championship belts on this Labor Day afternoon. Titles were changing fast and furious through Texas. The feud would continue on. Here's finally one with Kevin taking on Bam Bam Gordy. And three brothers on the cover of All-Star Wrestling. Four brothers, one waiting in the wings to come up, and never really made it, never really came up, Mike. This is PWI's August of '85's issue. Wrestling World puts it out with Michael Hayes, and he's got Kerry in a chin lock here. Kerry's just facing the opposite way on this February issue of '85. The Birds on the cover of All-Star Wrestling. You know what? There's a good looking, I think there's let me see. I was just talking about Kevin Sullivan's People and a sexy picture of woman. I think she's in this on a trifold poster. Yeah, it is. Check out this poster. Holy Christ. If I can fit it all in there. Kevin Sullivan, the blood pouring out of his mouth or whatever it's supposed to be, wrapped in snakes, and look at woman. Good Christ almighty. I mean, oh, wow. Awesome. Hot, man. Great looking poster. But I can see how some of the parents would be upset at that. You bring it up to the line, have your mom buy it, like, put that fucking thing back. But man, what a crazy looking photo, just, as in satanic shit, and everyone's fearing that crowd at that time. It's just funny. Some years later, the feuds go on, and bridges get rebuilt, fences were mended, and the Von Erichs and the Freebirds are now friends. Fuck that. We want the war to go on. The Freebirds would have one more feud, and it would be a small one, but it would be a devastating one at certain times, and that would be against the Road Warriors, and pretty much matching up the same with championships early on as they both started out in their careers. Here's just a match that cost. This match took place at Super Clash in the ball field. The Road Warriors moved on to the NWA, but the Freebirds were the ones that cost the Road Warriors the tag team titles from Garvin and Regal. If it wasn't for their interference, they wouldn't have won. So, there had to be a chink in the armor for those dudes to beat the Road Warriors, and it was because of the Freebirds. And that set off a little war with them just at the right time when things moved up to the East Coast, and they were battling in Pro Wrestling USA. And we were able to catch a bunch of those shows up here, especially myself. I went to several AWA tapings, and the Birds were there all the time. Road Warriors never showed up, maybe twice, but they were always scheduled. Never, either they said that to the fans to fill the place up because no one was coming. Yeah, the Road Warriors are going to be here, and then time and time again they're not there, and the fans got pissed. And I remember one time, Hurricane Gloria was hitting the East Coast, and we had tickets to go to the show. It wasn't like I had special tickets. Any asshole could walk up to the counter and buy tickets because they were never selling out. Nobody really went to the AWA shows at the Tropicana Casino in Atlantic City. So the one night we don't go, it was when we had to evacuate the island down in South Jersey, when I was living down in South Jersey, and we had to leave because of the hurricane. And they continued with their TV taping, and the fucking Road Warriors showed up. I couldn't believe it. I was like, no, because a couple of my friends went. They never evacuated. And I didn't believe them until I seen the match on TV several weeks later. I was so pissed. But I figures, the one time they show up is when the place is evacuated. Maybe 10 people were in the crowd. This is an old Southwest Championship Wrestling program called The Wrestler from Joe Blanchard's territory down in San Antonio, Texas. And this is in '83, showing the Road Warriors were coming to their territory to beat up on who would have been? It would have been Gino Hernandez and Tully Blanchard, probably the tag team champ back then at this point. But same thing, they held the national titles just like the Freebirds did. Here they are again, PWI, March '84 with the national titles, getting a lot of press. They were like the Beatles in Japan for here in America. Absolutely went crazy for them. Dominated their covers as the national champions. Here they are now as the AWA champions with the old style belt they beat the Baron and the Crusher with for those belts before having the styles changed for them to the look like they were like when Hogan had the WWF belt. So here they are now for their first time in the Northeast battling at the Meadowlands. July 19th, the Road Warriors and the Freebirds are battling it out for Pro Wrestling USA's event. And they would have another one August of '85, and the Warriors would take on the Birds one more time. And this is just another program from Pro Wrestling USA. This was one of the generic programs that I had gotten from the TV taping. There's no lineup sheet in this one, but it had the Birds on it with the tag team belts. But yeah, they had a lot of matches under the radar. They were responsible for the Road Warriors losing the titles in the AWA, and they had a lot of bouts up and down the East Coast and stretched across the West and East. But hardly any coverage on the magazines for the Freebirds and the Road Warriors. Coming up to the final couple, we're looking at the Magnum TA and Nikita Koloff in what an incredible feud that was for just a short period of time throughout the Bash '86, and it really put in asses in the seats. The best of 7 series, Magnum goes down to like 3-0, and it looks like Nikita's going to sweep him, and then he comes all the way back. What a great feud that was with Nikita and Magnum, and shocking everybody. Nikita is the one who walks out with the title in the end. I thought for sure it'd be Magnum. Magnum had his eyes on bigger prizes and was most likely going to be the world champion instead. But what a great feud. And I covered several magazines with these guys throughout the summer of the Bash. Wrestling Scene covering it, as well as Inside Wrestling, the Red Menace, the Russians Conquer American Wrestling, and the Road Warriors on the bottom here, about to start a war with the Road Warriors because the Road Warriors were getting pissed off. We just at this time just left the AWA, and they made a trip up as AWA champions first for the Great American Bash '85, and they took on the Russians, and then they come back in Bash '86 in a double Russian chain match in Bash '86. So that's the build-up for them. This is one of the final issues in '85 for Wrestling '85. Tag team champions from the AWA and also the tag team champions in the NWA. Road Warriors that year getting tag team of the year, of course. Flair getting the wrestler of the year. Your Bash '85 program, first time in the NWA, and it is champions versus champions here, like I just said, in Bash '85. I don't remember the finish on that, and no titles have ever changed. Full coverage now, like we were talking about, would be covered in the Sports Review. Pro Wrestling Illustrated did a lot of it also for the Bash magazines, and it's in this December '85 issue for Great American Bash, and PWI has I think a few color pages. Either if it's not this one, it's the one with Dusty the following year. I can't remember, but there's some color shots in this Japanese issue here of the Bash, and that's Nikita taking on Flair, and Ivan and Crusher taking on the Road Warriors here. And Dusty taking on Tully in the tag team bout for the TV title. And Dusty wins the red new red leather TV belt in the Bash 85. So that was in this issue here of August 85's issue of Gong Weekly. If you wanted to see some color, like I said, we didn't get nothing in color. The only way we could see that is through those issues. Once again, the Road Warriors and the Russians on the cover of summer of 1986. They would meet again. The Road Warriors would face off against, was it Ivan and Nikita? In Rage in the Cage on April 28th in the Meadowlands. So a tag team match in a steel cage at the Meadowlands would be their final Pro Wrestling USA show. And Crockett would split off from the AWA, and they would go on to have their own TV show, the Worldwide Wrestling. In the Mid-Atlantic territory, AWA would have their own show as Pro Wrestling USA, and that future would go on to ESPN and carry on until the end of their company. But this was the end of their joint venture, and Dusty and Flair are on the front cover here. Flair takes on Magnum TA, Road Warriors, with Dusty now taking on Ivan, Nikita, and Crusher in another show in Jersey. Finishing it off, the last issue with Road Warrior Animal and Ivan Koloff on the cover of Ringside magazine, September of 86, and a great looking shot of Ivan getting choked in the chain match. You see the chain around his neck there, and there it is. Now, you know, there could have been a ton of feud people. There was a ton of matches I could have picked from. We could just call this one Volume 1, because there's just so many to choose from that have great feuds to highlight and showcase. I just want to pick out, you know, a couple of my favorites that were memorable to me that took place from like 1980 to like 1986, and that was, you know, pretty much the pinnacle for me for the wrestling in the Northeast anyway. After 86, I was strictly UWF, NWA, and, you know, guilty pleasure AWA as well. But thanks for joining me on this. I don't think this video was going to be this long. Damn, this is a long one. All right, guys, we'll see you on the next one.